So my name is Vincenzo Tuccillo, and in 2018 I founded studioforma, that is quite small, architectural practice at the moment, based in Como in Italy. I studied architecture at the Polytechnical School in Bari in southern Italy. And at that moment of my studies, the school where I studied was a pretty characterized environment, in the sense that all the teaching activity were deeply influenced by the Italian typological school. And so they were dominated by the thought of people like Saverio Muratori and Gianfranco Caniggia and also Aldo Rossi. And I specify these because I really do believe that, in fact, this initial imprinting that I had, as an architect on training, had a major impact in the way I actually look at architecture. Science, it showed me the importance of the relationship between typology and city, and taught me as well that as architects, we are always finally contributing to the project of the city as a collective work, So this is something that it was really important in my formation. And soon after the university, then I moved to Como, where I actually live and work. And here I had the opportunity to come in contact with the architectural culture of Ticino, that is the southern Italian-speaking canton of Switzerland, that is really close here to the Italian border. And, I already frequented the architectural culture of Switzerland as a student, because, I was really appreciating, the work of some Ticinese master like Luigi Snozzi and Livio Vacchini. And I think, that before opening my office, I've been working in Ticino for several years. And, this, I think, had on me an impact that I consider actually at least as much important as the university here, perhaps, because during this year working in Ticino as an architect, I, and later on, starting also being teaching assistant in the Academy of Architecture in Mendrisio, I was able, to appreciate the great architectural culture of this corner of Switzerland. And then I could meet and also collaborate with very skilled architects, both involved in professional and educational activities, who really taught me a lot, and with whom I still collaborate and maintain, enriching friendship, So I think, these two moments, the university here, and then, my first year as a professional in Ticino, are, I think, the most important moment, in my journey as an architect, as you were asking me.
So talking about forms, as you mentioned in your profile that you were discussing extensively in your website. I believe your idea about form is quite much like deeper and more rich compared to like the ordinary understanding of form. So could we like talk more about this, your idea of form as seen in your profile?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this as you are saying, this is quite, the entrance page of my website is a kind of a series, short series of reflection about form, because when came the moment to open my own firm, it was also the opportunity to look back at myself and to understand what in this year of education, collaboration, and readings have been most passionate about, and what from then on I would have considered to be real value in my work, And so looking back to this year of formation, I had the impression that finally this concept of form has been much misrepresented. Above all, I can say in my year of university, then in Switzerland, the environment was a little bit different, but in my year in university, and particularly referring to the Italian cultural environment, I had the feeling that, talking about form was a little bit, tricky in a way, because was considered a little bit, I don't know how to say, retrograde maybe, because the progress, what was saying as a progress in that year, was more, talking about processes and flows, and that is to say, having a little bit a more sociological approach to architecture, to the way of creating architecture. Or on the completely other hand, talking about form was generally associated to some excesses of forms that maybe, they were associated to the work of architects who were generally recognized under the quite generic idea of deconstructivism,
Yes.
So my idea of form, the idea of form I had developed during this year, and as I was mentioning before, that was inspired by this book by Aldo Rossi, was something that was completely different. In fact, it was something that was not formalist at all. So I tried to to look at form as the way of concretizing, of make architecture physical. Because as architect, I think, we could, nurture, we could, nurture our culture with very much stimulus coming from outside and also for other disciplines. So this is very important. For example, looking at economics and sociology and anthropology and all, the knowledge that could help architects to have a wider and deeper knowledge of the world we live in. But finally, as architect, we are also called to give forms to things. Because otherwise, you could, accumulate a lot of knowledge, but if you don't find then the way to give form to this knowledge and to transform, your idea about the city, about the spaces, about the relationship between people in physical artifacts, then as an architect, you cannot be effective in a way, So this is, finally my idea of form is that form, in fact, has always been in the history of architecture a way of make a synthesis, and this synthesis is what finally create the space we live in. So the space we live in is really rich, is really rich in thoughts of the architects who made the space, but finally, need to be physically translated. Otherwise, it's something that doesn't work. So when I refer to form, finally, I refer to the capacity of formalize a thought and to make, a thought became space, That is something that was quite usual in architecture. And at a point, because it was, divided, the debate was divided between excesses of form, without meaning, and, not form at all. run the risk, to not find anymore its place, Then there is, one more thing that I really appreciate about form, that is also that form can survive also, use. This was a concept that was also, present in the Aldo Rossi book that that describing the Palazzo della Ragione in Padua, and how this wonderful architecture could survive, the change of the different changes of uses. It demonstrates that once you are able to make really something that is exact, that is precise in the city, then, these forms are finally able to survive uses that, on the other hand, are temporarily and tied to the way of life of people. So just to make something durable and that is not ephemeral, you cannot escape form.
Yes. So now we could move on to the project that we talked about House LC.
Before that, Leonel, can we get more of history of the studioforma? So Vincenzo, you explain about how your study about the city and urban typology helped you to get this idea about how the form function and how city affects the architecture itself. But can you give us a story about how this process changed your mind about the form after you start your firm as an individual?
Well, when I started, because of course, when I was in the university, some of this process, were not so. I was not so aware, or on many things, because they taught you something, and I mean, yeah, sometimes I could appreciate, sometimes I didn't understand completely what they were teaching me. And then, in my first professional experience, I had, the first, before opening my own firm, I had, the first occasion to finally confront myself, with real architecture, with the real project. They were, like a normal project, or they were competition. And in that time, I think, I acquired more, awareness, about form. Then it came, then when I opened my own office, some of this awareness was already there. And that's the reason, on the opening of my office, I say, okay, how to also call my office, because I could call also with my name, but I didn't want to tie, also my work to my name, because I preferred to tie, my work to an ideal, how to say, trajectory, an ideal intention. And that was, about form. So after that, everything, we tried to manage, we tried to do in our office in these 5 years, was a bit going on doing competition, going on doing private works, but always trying to test, in a way, also these ideas we put at the start about form. So it's always, a way of testing in our daily works. We are actually trying also to make this idea participate to our process. Then, sometimes it's more easy. It really depends also on the scale of the project you can work on. But we are always, it's something that, connecting to your question, it's something that started. It's something that is daily modifying our work also, because it's this question about form are for us open question, in the sense that we and it was a little bit also the concept of the site to make these sentences about form a kind of diary that you could you could verify with your practice, and you could go on reflecting during your practice. So I think that these ideas about form are still modifying our way of working, and will always continue to do it if we will be able to integrate them in our approach.
Exactly. I think the environment is a huge aspect of this, especially in Italy, especially in Europe in general, rather than like modernized city. It's going to be very different.
Yeah. This is quite. I think also that is quite an Italian character, and European in general, and probably, as you were saying, particularly Italian.
Yes, exactly. Before this, I was explaining to Leonan about how in these countries people are so connected with their heritage and tradition. So it's a huge key. You can't do every like random type of design for people that been through this thousands of years of history. So they can't connect to this design. So it's so important. And as you mentioned, it should be a picture of the city. So the building itself, the facade itself is all connected together. The city is connected to the architecture.
Yeah, this is really an extraordinary value. Yesterday I was having a stroll in Ticino, in the Italian Swiss canton that is really close to here, the Italian speaking Swiss canton that is really close to here, because we were looking for the sites for the site that we will take as project site for our next semester, with this design atelier in the Academy of Architecture in Mendrisio. And these sites were all scattered around, in the, how to say, in the new city, in the peripheral part of the city. And really, we were commenting with the other assistant and with the professor. We were commenting how, in the last, finally, maybe 50 years, we haven't been able, anymore, to create such, significant relationship in the city, and that is, a pity, because in fact, there are very few examples today of, modern part of the city that you could say, okay, it's really, works, in the way the relationship, because there was really a diffusion also, I think, in Europe. There is still this sensibility in the people, of course, but there was quite a shift to a culture of the object, scattering around the city, that, played as, like solo player, and didn't, didn't pay attention to the relationship they were creating, between themselves. So this is a pity, and I think, coming back, to think about this, to the potential of this relationship, is centrally, is crucial in the way we will work in, in the next year. And also for us as architects, it's really a big enrichment, because finally when you are dealing with a project, you cannot be, focused, on your, just on your, obsession and, on your, ideas, but you have, always to manage, the contact point between, your ideas, your obsession, and, a world that is out there, and the relationship, that creates with the city. So I think, it's really a big enrichment also for the project, taking into consideration relationship in general.
Exactly. And Vincenzo, since you brought this up and you have this interaction with the students, what's their view about the connection between city and architecture for our younger generation?
So what about the young generation? Then, I think, it really depends on the school. It's something, that it's really depending on the school. I can say that generally, in the school I am teaching, this, this relationship is quite important. So then it also depends, on the teacher, because teachers I've been working with that are from Ticino, one was from Spain. They were all, especially, this teacher from Ticino were especially attentive, especially focused on the city, and also on the relationship, between architecture and city, because they, as students, they were students of people like Luigi Snozzi, that in Switzerland was really carrying on this reflection, about the city and architecture. So I think, that sometimes then, depending on the course, the student, on the design atelier, the students attend, this aspect will be more or less important. But I think generally, Switzerland is, especially in this moment, is really paying attention to this aspect, also in terms of political agenda. So there is, for example, in this moment in Switzerland, sorry, I talk a lot about Switzerland because actually, is a place that I really, even if I am Italian, I am, how to say, 50% involved in Swiss affair, and 50% involved in Italian affair, because as a teacher I am there in Switzerland, and also as a former professional I was there. So it's a place that I really know, also have the opportunity to know in these years. And so I was saying that also in the political agenda now there is a great attention to try, to reduce the waste of spaces in the city, to make, the constructed environment more precise, more, better sized, and finally more intense, because finally, this scattered city, this really low density city, it's something that doesn't produce intensity also in the architectural terms and in life terms. So it's really important to come back to considering this aspect, also because of this. And I can say, that students, are attentive to this theme, and I think, then depending on the singular student, but there is a generally appreciation for this aspect in the architectural debate at the moment.